Hello everyone and welcome back to the Netherworld Bibliothèque, where I have just returned from traversing the multiverse and I have brought back some books that I will add to our shelves and I will be reviewing over the coming weeks. In this video, I'm just going to give you a really quick overview of what's to come. If you see a book here that you like, I would suggest subscribing, and that way you won't miss the book review of the book that you're most interested in. Alright, so let's get started. The first book that I have is Legături, surprinzătoare, Cucuteni, Yangshao, Dacia, China, Antică. So this book is by Professor Dr. Mihai Popescu. So this book is looking at some archaeological finds in Cucuteni in ancient Romania, Dacia, and in Yangshao in ancient China. And there are some really surprising finds in some of the ceramics. There are some very similar designs, and there are even some items found at the Romanian site in Cucuteni which have like the ancient swastika and which have the yin-yang symbol. And this is thousands of years before we know that Asian and European cultures came into contact with each other. So excavating the site suggests that maybe these two ancient cultures came into contact way before we thought that these two cultures even knew about each other, way before the Silk Road, way before Marco Polo. So it looks really intriguing. I will be getting to that shortly. All right, so let's just put this down. Moving on, the second book that I have for us is Harmonograph, a visual guide to the mathematics of music by Anthony Ashton. So harmonograph really made me think of cymatics, which is the study of the vibrations of sound. And it really made me think of this thing I saw years ago, where if you have a thin sheet of metal and you put a fine powder on top, and then you play a certain note or a certain sound, the vibration of that sound will create this geometric pattern in the sand. I remember the first time I saw that, I thought it was so amazing. So I believe that Harmonograph is more about that. But as I said, I haven't read it yet, so stick around if that sounds like something you're interested in. The third title that I have for us is The Language of the Corpse, The Power of the Cadaver in Germanic and Icelandic Sorcery, and this is by Cody Dickerson. So this just looked and sounded really intriguing. I know that's saying that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but honestly, the cover artwork and the title a lot of the time is what gets me interested in a book. So I thought, yep, sounds good. I know that we have a few more necromancy book reviews coming up on this channel, so I thought, okay, if it's with the theme, if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. It's quite a thick book, what am I saying? It's quite a thin book, so it shouldn't take me too long to get through this, so yeah, stay tuned. As I was saying, necromancy. So now we move on to The Graveyard Wanderers, The Wise Ones and the Dead in Sweden. This is by Dr. Thomas K. Jonsson. Now this book, I have read it. I have had this lying around for a while. I did want to make my return to YouTube with this book. You may know I've been on like a 2-year hiatus. So I have already read this, but it's been a while now. I've kind of forgotten the details of it. I will need to reread it to do the book review. I know this has a lot of different spells. I know it goes through if you want to achieve X, Y, Z, really comprehensive list of things, all sorts of spells using bones, using coffin nails, using graveyard dust, all sorts of spells to achieve whatever it is that you want. And there's a fair bit of Christianity in this book. Just reading the title, I thought it would be a lot of like Swedish pagan practices pre-Christianity, but reading it, there was actually quite a lot of reference to Christianity and praying to God and asking God to help your spell. So yes, if that sounds intriguing, please stay tuned. This review will be coming up shortly. And the next item on my list is The Ineffable Name, A Crafter's Guide to Traditional Witchcraft by George Hares and forward by Gemma Gary. So, Ineffable. The first time I heard that word, I do believe was in a Terry Pratchett book. I am a great fan of Terry Pratchett. I've reviewed a couple of his books on this channel, so if that interests you, stick around and find those. The reason that I was drawn to this book, let me just read you a little bit of the blurb. The Ineffable Name, being a book aimed at the traditional crafter, delves into some of the core principles, practices, and origins that lie within the old craft. So what I really liked is that this was looking at more traditional folk magic. One of the observations I have of modern witchcraft books, especially like introductory to witchcraft books these days, is in English, witchcraft is a really broad term that encompasses any practice that reveres nature or that works with natural elements. So because this is so broad, you can have two people who say that they're a witch, and when you ask, okay, what do you believe, what do you practice, their answers could be completely different. But I find that a lot of introductory to witchcraft books in English don't acknowledge these cultural differences and don't acknowledge how the craft has changed throughout time. So if you pick up like a beginner's guide to witchcraft book, you would be forgiven for thinking, okay, witches, they all use candles, they all use crystals, they all use incense, and everyone celebrates the wheel of the year. Because it's just the same information just repeated over and over, and there's no acknowledgement that, hey, actually witchcraft is a really broad set of beliefs and practices. So with this book, I thought, okay, I've flicked through it a little bit. It doesn't look like it's going through those same homogenous tips. It really looks like it's talking about older traditional folk magic. So I thought, you know what, I might actually learn something new from this one. So I'm really looking forward to it. We're getting through this list quite quickly. I see I just have 3 more titles to go. So the next one on the list is Phantom Armies of the Night, The Wild Hunt and the Ghostly Processions of the Undead by Claude Legături. So I also look at who the author of the book is and what qualifications or what personal experience they have on that topic, and that really does help me decide, do I think this is a credible text? Do I want to buy it? Do I want to include it in our collection? So with Claude Legături, I can see that he is a former professor of medieval literature and civilization at the Sorbonne. So that adds credibility in my book. So this just looked really interesting. One moment, let me actually remind myself why I picked it up. It's been a little while. I'm back, everyone. I have reminded myself why I picked this book up, and let me just read that out to you. Once upon a time, a phenomenon existed in medieval Europe that continuously fueled local lore. During the long winter nights, a strange and unknown troop could be heard passing outside over the land and through the air. Anyone caught by surprise in the open fields or depths of the woods would see a bizarre procession of demons, giants, hounds, ladies of the night, soldiers, and knights, some covered in blood and others carrying their heads beneath their arms. This was the wild or infernal hunt, the host of the damned, the phantom army of the night, a theme that still inspires poets, writers, and painters to this day. So that sounded really interesting. It did remind me of a similar concept in this young adult series that I read a little while ago, but I think the author is Melissa Ma, and I think one of the books, I'm just going to find the title and I'm going to put it on the screen now because I don't want to give you any bad information. But yeah, I think the author is Melissa Ma, and there's something like this phenomenon in her books. So when I read this blurb, I was like, oh yeah, I think I'm familiar with this concept. But yeah, nice to pick up something that I believe is a credible text by a professor of medieval literature. So I'm looking forward to this one as well. Once again, stay tuned and subscribe if you don't want to miss this review. Nearly there. The second last book that I want to read is The Family Chao by Lan Samantha Chung. Now, in preparing for these videos, I do research how to pronounce names properly. And I did look up the traditional Chinese pronunciation of Chao. But then I watched an interview with the author and she just says The Family Chao. So she pronounces it in a very anglicized way. And I thought, you know what, she's the author, it's her work. If that's how she pronounces it, then I think it's okay for me to just pronounce it in an anglicized way as well. So this is a little bit different. I think this is like the only fictional book on my list. This is a bit of a murder mystery. So it's set in present day US. There's the family Chao who have a restaurant, and one day the head of the family is found frozen to death in the restaurant's freezer. And then it becomes this whodunit. So I thought, okay, it sounds like it could be lighthearted. Sounds interesting. But then I kept reading the blurb and it was talking about family secrets, and I was like, it sounds like it's getting a little bit intense. I'm looking for something a little bit like lighthearted, a little bit fun. And so I was looking at the reviews or the endorsements, which usually don't mean anything to me, because of course you're not going to put a review on your book that is like 1 star out of 5. Of course you're not going to put a review on your book that says it was terrible, I hated it. So like, duh, if you're putting someone's review or endorsement on your book, duh, they're going to have something good to say about you. So usually I don't really pay too much attention, but in this one instance, apparently Vogue says this is scathing and hilarious. And I was really sold by the word hilarious being used. I am looking forward to this being a hilarious book. And if you stay tuned and watch my review coming up in the next couple of weeks, we'll see if it did indeed turn out to be hilarious, or if the joke was on me. And finally, to the last book on this list. It's the largest one here. It's the only hardback here. It's the one you've probably been staring at most of this whole video. It is Killing Moon by Yue Nesbø. This is book 13 in the Harry Holle books. So if you're not familiar, this is a Scandinavian crime novel. It's book 13, which is mostly set in Oslo. It follows crime detective Harry Holle. He is a recovering alcoholic. He's had a series of unfortunate events in his lifetime. The books are very, very well written. I would say they are on par with the Millennium Trilogy. So if you're thinking, oh, the Millennium Trilogy, what's that? I've never heard of it. Yes, you have. If you know The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, that is one of the books in the Millennium Trilogy. Also, interestingly, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, originally in Swedish, that is called Men Who Hate Women, but the English version of the book is called The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. But anyway, I digress. So getting back to Yue Nesbø. So this is book 13 in the Harry Holle series. You don't have to read them sequentially. I certainly did not start sequentially. Mostly each one is about a standalone crime, but that being said, it does have recurring characters and they do have their own histories and their interactions with one another. So you could pick up any one of them and understand most of what is going on, but I think it is better if you read them sequentially, although you don't have to. But yeah, this is book 13 in the series, so if possible, maybe start a little bit earlier if you can go all the way back to the first book. One gripe that I have from the previous book, Knife, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but if you have read Knife, you know that something bad happens to Harry towards the end of the book. And as I said, he's already had a hard life. So I think both of his parents have passed away. He is just with his sister now. I think his sister has Down syndrome, didn't have very many friends growing up. He has struggled with alcoholism. And then something else bad happens to him at the end of Knife. On top of, a lot of the crimes tend to have a grisly ending. So through trying to solve all these previous crimes, he now has a scar on his face. I think he's missing a couple of fingers. So I think enough bad things have happened to Harry Holle. What happened at the end of Knife, I don't think was necessary. I know he's a fictional character, but I just think this character has been through enough. I was really quite angry with Yue Nesbø for what he did to Harry at the end of 12 Knife. That was the 12th book. If you have thoughts about that, if you have read it, let me know in the comment section. But if not, book 13, I'm interested to see where we go from here. Yes, obviously there's going to be another crime to solve, but considering how much personal loss the main character has suffered, where do we go from here in terms of the personal narrative? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Alrighty, so those are the books that you can look forward to on this channel over the next coming weeks. Let me know which one you are most excited for, or if there is a book that you really enjoyed and would really like to see a review of, please let me know in the comment section. But that is it for now. Thank you for stopping by, and maybe I will see you next time.